Wu Jin stared at the massive star map floating in front of him. The blue lights showed trade routes connecting thousands of star systems across the galaxy. Red dots marked planets with life. Green lines showed safe paths for spaceships. He had been working on these maps for 3 years now, and he knew every detail by heart. The night shift at the Galactic Archive was always quiet. Most workers went home when the 2 suns of Vorthan Prime set. Wu Jin liked the peace. He could focus better when the huge building was empty and silent. Tonight felt different, though. The computer had been making strange sounds all week. Small errors kept appearing in the database. Nothing major, but enough to worry him. His job was to keep the galactic maps perfect. Every ship in space depended on his work. He pulled up the main galactic chart and started checking each sector. Everything looked normal until he reached the outer rim. There, in the northwestern edge of the galaxy, sat a large empty space. The computer labeled it as Restricted Sector 7739. Wu Jin frowned. He had seen this blank area before but never really thought about it. Tonight something bothered him. The empty space was huge. It could hold thousands of star systems. Why was it blank? He typed commands into his computer trying to get more information. The screen showed only basic data. Access level 9 required. Contact System Administrator. That was strange. Wu Jin had level 7 access, which let him see almost everything. What could need level 9? The door behind him opened with a soft sound. Felthar walked in, his forearms carrying data tablets. The tall alien looked tired. His blue skin seemed paler than usual. Working late again, Wu Jin? Felthar's voice was always calm and deep. Just fixing some database errors, Wu Jin said. He decided to ask about the restricted sector. Felthar, what's in Sector 7739? Felthar stopped moving. His large black eyes looked at the screen, then at Wu Jin. For a moment he said nothing. Why do you ask? It's just empty space on all our maps. But it's so big. Seems weird that nothing is there. Felthar set down his tablets and walked closer. His face looked worried now. Some boundaries exist for good reasons, Wu Jin. The Confederation has mapped 847,000 star systems. Surely that's enough for any lifetime of exploration. But why is it restricted? What's the danger? Not everything needs to be questioned, Velthar said firmly. Focus on your regular work. The shipping routes need updating by tomorrow. Wu Jin nodded, but his curiosity only grew stronger. After Velthar left, he tried different ways to access information about Sector 7739. Every attempt hit the same wall. Level 9 clearance required. He decided to try a different approach. Instead of looking for current data, he searched the historical archives. Old shipping records, trade logs, diplomatic messages from centuries ago. There, buried in files from 300 years past, he found something interesting. An old trade manifest mentioned cargo delivery to Sol Federation, Sector 7739. Another document talked about diplomatic contact with human colonies in the Sol system. Humans? Wu Jin had never heard of humans before. He searched for more references. He found dozens of old documents mentioning humans, the Sol Federation, and trade agreements. But all the records stopped suddenly about 280 years ago. After that, nothing. It was like humans had just disappeared from history. The next morning, Daon arrived early for her shift. She worked with data analysis, helping to organize information from across the galaxy. Wu Jin trusted her more than anyone else at the archive. Dayun, have you ever heard of humans? She looked up from her workstation. Humans? No, I don't think so. Why? Wu Jin showed her the old documents he had found. They spent an hour reading through the files together. Dayun's face grew more confused with each document. This is really strange, she said. These records show regular contact with this human species for almost 50 years. Then suddenly nothing, like they were erased from history. And their space is marked as restricted now, Wu Jin added. Level 9 clearance only. Level 9? Dayun's eyes went wide. That's the highest security level. Even the council members only have level 8. They kept searching, but every recent file about Sector 7739 was locked away. The few older documents they could access painted a picture of a peaceful species that had joined galactic society around 350 years ago. The humans seemed to have advanced technology and had established colonies on several worlds. But then came the mysterious gap. No records, no mentions, no trace of what had happened to them. Maybe they went extinct, Dayun suggested. Then why keep their space restricted? Dead civilizations don't need security classifications. As the day went on, More workers arrived at the archive. Wu Jin tried asking a few of the older employees about humans or Sector 7739. Most had never heard of either, but a few gave him the same nervous look that Velthar had shown. An old crystalline archivist named Kethram actually stepped back when Wu Jin mentioned humans. "Where did you hear that word?" she asked, her crystal body changing from blue to orange, which meant fear. "In some old trade records. I was just curious about... Curiosity about some things can be dangerous," Kethram said quickly. She walked away without another word. By the end of his shift, Wu Jin felt more confused than ever. An entire species that seemed to have been erased from current records. A huge section of space that no one could access information about. Colleagues who got scared when he asked simple questions. That night, alone in his small apartment, Wu Jin made a decision. He was going to find out what happened to the humans, and he was going to learn why their space was so secret that even mentioning them made people afraid. He pulled up his personal computer and started a new search. This time he would be more careful. He would look through archives from other planets, check records from different species, find information that hadn't been locked away. Somewhere in the galaxy's vast collection of data, there had to be answers, and Wu Jin was determined to find them. Outside his window, the stars shone bright in the night sky. Somewhere out there, in the direction of Sector 7739, lay the answers to questions that no one else seemed brave enough to ask. The Confederation Council chamber was the largest room on Vorthon Prime. Representatives from 200 different species sat in circles around a central speaking platform. Each species had their own section with special seats, air systems, and gravity settings to keep them comfortable. Ambassador HFY of the Centauri Collective had been preparing for this day for weeks. She stood at her species platform, checking her notes one final time. What she was about to propose had never been tried before in the Council's 500-year history. Council Prime Zethara called the session to order. The huge Vagan leader's voice echoed through the chamber. The 847th Quarterly Council is now in session. First speaker, Ambassador HFY. HFY walked to the central platform. Her heart was beating fast, but her voice stayed calm and clear. Honored council members, I come before you today with a formal proposal. The Centauri Collective requests permission to establish trade relations with the inhabitants of Sector 7739. The chamber fell completely silent. Not one of the thousands of representatives made a sound. Even the translation computers seemed to pause. Zethara's face turned from its normal green color to a darker shade. Ambassador HFY, please repeat your request. We wish to open diplomatic and trade relations with Sector 7739, HFY said again. Louder this time. A wave of shocked whispers spread through the chamber. Several representatives stood up from their seats. Others started talking urgently to their assistants. This session is now closed to public viewing, Zethara announced quickly. All recording devices must be turned off immediately. Security, clear the observation galleries. Within minutes, the chamber was empty except for the official council members. The massive doors sealed shut with a deep rumbling sound. Zethara looked directly at HFY. Ambassador, where did you learn about Sector 7739? It appears on all our star charts as restricted space. My government believes it's time to explore what lies beyond our current boundaries. Your government doesn't understand what they're asking for, said Quan, the ancient crystalline representative. Her body glowed with a worried yellow light. Some doors should never be opened. What doors? HFY asked. What exactly is in that sector? The council members looked at each other. Most of them seemed confused and scared. But the oldest members, those who had served for more than 200 years, all had the same frightened expression. Zethara finally spoke. We need to discuss this in private council session. All level 8 and below personnel must leave the chamber. Most of the younger representatives and assistants filed out through side doors. Only about 30 beings remained in the huge chamber. Now, Zethara said when they were alone. Tell her. Quan's crystal body shifted to a deep red color. 300 years ago, we made contact with a species that called themselves humans. They came from the Sol system in what is now Sector 7739. What happened to them? HFY asked. Nothing happened to them. They're still there. Another old council member, a Vorthon named Telkar, spoke for the first time. We agreed to leave them alone. Why? Were they hostile? No, Quan said quietly. That was the problem. They weren't hostile at all. They were Beyond us, HFY frowned. I don't understand. Zethara stood up from his massive chair and walked to the center of the room. Let me tell you what really happened 300 years ago. A single human ship appeared at the edge of our space. Just one ship. It sent a simple message asking for peaceful contact. That sounds normal for first contact, HFY said. We thought so too. We sent our biggest warship to meet them. The pride of our fleet at that time. A massive vessel with weapons that could destroy planets. Telkar continued the story. The human ship was small, maybe big enough for 50 people. Our captain thought it would be an easy negotiation. Then the humans demonstrated their technology. What did they demonstrate? Quan's light dimmed to almost nothing. They made our warship disappear. Not destroyed, just gone. Moved it to the other side of the galaxy in less than a second. Then they brought it back completely undamaged. They didn't threaten us, Zethara added. They didn't demand anything. They simply showed us what they could do, and then asked if we wanted to establish normal diplomatic relations. HFY felt cold despite the warm chamber. What happened next? We panicked, Telkar admitted. Our most powerful weapon couldn't even scratch their ship. They moved matter through space like we move air. Their technology was so advanced it seemed like magic. So we made a deal, Quan said. The Sol Accords. We agreed to mark their space as restricted and never enter it without permission. They agreed to not interfere with our development and to let us build our own galactic civilization. But surely in 300 years we've advanced enough to— No. Zethara's voice was firm. We haven't. Intelligence reports suggest they've advanced just as much as we have. Maybe more. HFY looked around the chamber at the scared faces of the galaxy's most powerful leaders. You're all afraid of them. Terrified, Quan admitted. But also grateful. They could have conquered the entire galaxy in a week. Instead, they chose to be neighbors. What if they've changed? What if they want contact now? They've never tried to contact us, Telkar said. In 300 years, not once. They've kept their side of the agreement perfectly. Another council member, an elderly Andromedian named Vexera, spoke up. There have been incidents. Ships that accidentally crossed into their space. They've always been returned safely. Sometimes with repairs and upgrades we can't understand. They're watching us, Zethara said. They know everything that happens in our space. But they never interfere unless someone crosses their borders. HFY felt overwhelmed. So what do we do? Just pretend they don't exist forever? It's worked for 300 years, Quan said. Why change now? Because maybe we're ready, HFY said. Maybe it's time to stop being afraid and start being equals. The chamber fell silent again. The idea of being equals with humans seemed impossible to most of the council members. Finally, Zethara spoke. If we're going to make contact, we need more information. We need to know what we're dealing with. How do we get information without breaking the Sol Accords? Telkar asked. Vexera had an idea. We could send an automated probe. Technically, that's not a manned vessel entering their space. That's still a violation of the agreement, Quan protested. A small violation, Zethara said thoughtfully. If they destroy the probe, we'll know they want to be left alone. If they don't, we might learn something useful, HFY finished. The council voted in secret. By a narrow margin, they agreed to send a single probe into human space. It would be disguised as a navigation error, a simple accident. As the session ended, HFY wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history, or if she had taken the first step toward something amazing. Either way, there was no turning back now. In 1 week, they would know what the humans wanted. The research station on Kepler 442b's moon was small and hidden. Dr. Taemin had chosen this location carefully. The moon was far from major trade routes, and the thick asteroid field around it made detection almost impossible. For 5 years, he and his partner, Dr. Bora, had worked here in secret. Their laboratory was filled with strange objects, pieces of metal that seemed to bend light around them, electronic devices that hummed with unknown energy, fragments of hull plating that felt warm to the touch but showed no heat on any scanner. Hand me the quantum scanner, Taemin said, not looking up from his work table. Bora passed him the device. She was monitoring the deep space communication array they had built on the moon's surface. For months they had been trying to intercept any signals from Sector 7739. Anything today? Taemin asked. The usual background noise. Wait. Bora adjusted several controls on her console. I'm getting something different. It's very faint, but the pattern looks artificial. Taemin set down his tools and walked over to her station. On the screen, a complex wave pattern was forming. It repeated every few seconds, but each repetition was slightly different. "Can you clean up the signal?" Bora's fingers flew over the controls. The static slowly faded and a clear transmission emerged. They could hear voices speaking in an unknown language. The words were soft and musical, nothing like any galactic language they knew. "That has to be them," Taemin whispered. "The humans." They recorded everything, playing the transmission over and over. After hours of analysis, Bora noticed something important. "Taemin, listen to this part." She played a section where the voices sounded excited. "They're talking about numbers. Look at the frequency patterns." On her screen, she showed how certain sounds matched up with mathematical concepts. The humans were discussing complex physics equations as easily as others might talk about the weather. "These aren't just numbers," Taemin realized. "They're talking about manipulating gravity fields, and they're discussing it like it's routine maintenance." Over the following weeks, they intercepted more transmissions, family conversations between different star systems, children talking to their grandparents across impossible distances with no time delay, technical discussions about projects that made no sense to galactic science. The breakthrough came when they caught a routine message between Earth and a colony world. A mother was talking to her daughter about daily life. She mentioned fixing the artificial gravity in their basement, adjusting the faster-than-light communication array in their backyard, and planning a vacation to the old galaxy. "The old galaxy?" Bora repeated. "What does that mean?" Taemin was staring at the data analysis. "Bora, look at these power readings. This casual conversation is being transmitted across 400 light-years instantly. No delay at all. They're treating faster-than-light communication like we treat local phone calls." They continued their research, growing more amazed and terrified with each discovery. The humans spoke casually about technologies that the Confederation couldn't even imagine. Artificial gravity was as common as electric lights. Faster-than-light travel seemed as easy as driving to the store. But the most shocking discovery came when they analyzed the background radiation from human space. Bora was studying energy patterns when she noticed something impossible. "Taemin, you need to see this. The energy signatures from their systems. They're not using fusion power or antimatter. They're drawing energy directly from space itself. That's impossible. You can't extract energy from empty space, no." "That's what I thought too. But look at these readings." She showed him data that made no sense according to galactic physics. They're somehow tapping into the fundamental forces of the universe. Zero-point energy extraction on a massive scale. Taemin sat down heavily in his chair. "We're not dealing with an advanced civilization. We're dealing with beings who have mastered the basic laws of reality." Their work was interrupted when Bora's long-range sensors detected a ship approaching the moon. It was moving fast and had the energy signature of a Confederation intelligence vessel. "We've been discovered," she said, her voice tight with fear. "Quick, download everything to the emergency transmitter. Send it to that cartographer on Vorthan Prime." "Wu Jin? Why him?" "He's been asking questions about Sector 7739. If anyone will use this information properly, it's him." Bora's fingers raced across the controls, copying 5 years of research onto a secure data packet. The approaching ship was only minutes away. The laboratory door exploded inward. Agent Yoon of Confederation Intelligence stepped through the smoke, followed by a squad of armed soldiers. "Dr. Taemin, Dr. Bora, you are under arrest for violation of the Galactic Security Act. Your research materials are hereby confiscated." Taemin raised his hands but kept talking. "Agent Yoon, you need to understand what we've discovered. The humans aren't just advanced. They're operating on a completely different level of existence. Your unauthorized research into restricted matters ends now," Yoon said coldly. "Seize all equipment and data." The soldiers began collecting their research, but Bora had managed to send the data packet just before they arrived. She caught Taemin's eye and nodded slightly. Their work would continue even if they couldn't. "You're making a mistake," Taemin said as they put restraints on his wrists. "The Confederation needs to know what we're dealing with. The humans have technology that makes our entire civilization look like children playing with toys." "The Confederation knows exactly what it's dealing with," Yoon replied. "That's why research like yours is forbidden." As they were led away, Taemin looked back at their laboratory one last time. 5 years of careful work was being destroyed in minutes. But somewhere in space, their data packet was racing toward Vorthan Prime and a young cartographer, who might be brave enough to use it. Agent Yoon, Bora said as they reached the transport ship. What happens when other species learn the truth? When they realize we've been living in a protected bubble for 300 years? Yoon paused at the ship's entrance. For a moment his professional mask slipped, and they saw genuine fear in his eyes. Then we hope the humans are still feeling protective, he said quietly. The transport ship lifted off, carrying away the two scientists who had spent years trying to understand humanity's true nature. Their laboratory was sealed and marked for destruction, but their research lived on, encoded in a message that was already halfway to its destination. In 3 hours, Woojin would receive data that would change everything he thought he knew about the galaxy. And hidden in that data was a truth that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Humans weren't hiding from the galaxy. They were protecting it. The real question was protecting it from what? And that answer lay in the deeper regions of space that even humans called the old galaxy. Places where civilizations existed that made humanity look young and primitive. The galactic community was about to learn that they weren't at the top of the cosmic food chain. They weren't even close-ish. The council voted in secret. By a narrow margin, they agreed to send a single probe into human space. It would be disguised as a navigation error, a simple accident. As the session ended, Hee-Won wondered if she had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history, or if she had taken the first step toward something amazing. Either way, there was no turning back now. In 1 week, they would know what the humans wanted. Woojin was working late again when his computer chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as unknown, but the encryption pattern looked familiar. It was the same type used by researchers at remote stations. He opened the message and found a massive data file attached. The transmission note was brief. From Dr. Bora, use this information wisely. Trust no one in authority. The truth must be known. Woojin remembered Bora from university. She had been studying advanced communications while he learned mapping. He hadn't heard from her in years. Why was she sending him classified-looking data? He downloaded the file to his personal storage and started reading. What he found made his hands shake. The data contained 5 years of research into human technology and communications, detailed analysis of intercepted transmissions, energy readings that broke every known law of physics, evidence that humans possessed technology so advanced it appeared magical. But the most shocking discovery was the casual nature of human communications. They discussed manipulating space and time like others talked about fixing a broken door. They mentioned travel to places called the Old Galaxy and the deep territories as if they were routine business trips. One intercepted message made Woojin stop reading entirely. A human father was explaining to his child why they couldn't visit the young races in what he called the protected zone. The protected zone was everything the Confederation considered normal. Space. The young races aren't ready yet, the father had said. They need more time to grow up. Maybe in another few hundred years they'll be mature enough for real contact. Woojin realized with horror that humans saw the entire galactic community as children who needed protection. The Confederation, with all its power and technology, was viewed as a developing civilization that wasn't ready for adult responsibilities. His thoughts were interrupted by urgent news from the communications center. Taeyeon burst into his office, her face pale with excitement and fear. Woojin, something's happening. The council just authorized a probe mission into Sector 7739. They did what? Ambassador Hee-Won convinced them to send an automated probe. It's supposed to look like a navigation error, but everyone knows it's deliberate. Woojin thought about the data he had just read. If humans really had the technology that Bora's research suggested, they would detect the probe instantly. And after 300 years of respecting boundaries, this would be the first official violation of the Seoul Accords. When does the probe launch? It already launched. Daeun's remote piloting it from the command center. They want real-time data about any human response. Woojin grabbed his security badge and ran toward the command center. If the humans reacted badly to this violation, it could mean disaster for the entire galaxy. The command center was crowded with officials and technicians. On the main screen, they could see the probe's view as it approached the boundary of Sector 7739. The space looked empty, just like any other region between stars. Daeun sat at the pilot control station, her hands steady on the controls despite the tension in the room. Probe crossing into restricted space in 30 seconds, she announced. Council Prime Zethara stood behind her, watching the screen intently. Remember, this is just a navigation error. If challenged, explain that we're lost and request assistance. The probe crossed the invisible boundary. For several minutes, nothing happened. The space seemed as empty as the star charts indicated. Then the sensors detected something approaching. Fast. Unknown vessel incoming, Daun reported. It's not like anything in our databases. On the screen, a ship appeared that was both beautiful and impossible. It seemed to be made of liquid metal that flowed and shifted constantly. It moved without any visible engines, and space itself seemed to bend around it. The ship stopped directly in front of the probe. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a voice came through the communication system speaking perfect galactic standard. Confederation probe, you appear to be lost. Please remain stationary while we assist you. Everyone in the command center held their breath. The voice was calm and friendly with no hint of anger or threat. Yes, we seem to have had a navigation error, Dayun said into the microphone. We're trying to return to Confederation space. We understand. Navigation can be challenging in this region. Please allow us to make some improvements to your systems. Before anyone could respond, something amazing happened. The probe's ancient and patched systems began upgrading themselves. Broken circuits repaired automatically. Outdated computers transformed into advanced processors. Damaged hull plating became stronger and more efficient. What are they doing? Zethara whispered. They're fixing our probe, Dayun said in wonder. But how? They're not even touching it. When the upgrades were complete, the human ship sent another message. Your vessel is now repaired and improved. We've also updated your navigation systems to prevent future errors. Please return safely to your home space. The voice paused, then continued. Also, please tell Ambassador Hayawan that we appreciate her courage in reaching out. When your people are ready to meet as equals, we'll be here. The human ship disappeared as suddenly as it had arrived. Space folded around it, and it was gone. The command center erupted in shocked conversation. Dayun stared at her control panel, which now showed readings she had never seen before. The probe's capabilities had increased by several 100%. They knew, Zethara said quietly. They knew exactly who sent the probe and why. Sir, Dayun said, her voice shaking. The probe is receiving a priority transmission. It's addressed to someone called Minho. On the screen, a human face appeared. The man looked young but had eyes that seemed much older. He spoke directly to the camera as if he could see everyone in the command center. Greetings, friends. I'm Captain Minho of the Solar Federation vessel Harmony. I know this contact wasn't entirely accidental, and that's perfectly fine. Curiosity is a sign of growth. Minho smiled, and his expression was kind but also somehow sad. We've been aware of your civilization's development for the past 300 years. We're proud of what you've accomplished. The Galactic Confederation is a remarkable achievement for such young species. The word young hit everyone like a physical blow. This human, who looked barely 30 years old, was calling their entire civilization young. We know you have questions, Minho continued. We know you're curious about us and about the larger universe beyond your current understanding. That's good. Questions are the first step toward growth. He paused, and his expression became more serious. But we also know that knowledge given too quickly can be harmful. You've built something beautiful here. A peaceful alliance of different species working together. We don't want to disrupt that growth by overwhelming you with truths you're not ready for. However, and here Minho smiled again, if your people truly want to begin the next phase of your development, we're willing to start formal contact. Not as superior to inferior, but as older siblings helping younger ones take their next steps. The transmission ended with coordinates for a meeting point just outside Sector 7739. If you decide you're ready, send a single ship to these coordinates in 1 month. We'll be waiting. The screen went dark, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Finally, Zethara spoke. Dayun, bring the probe home. We have a lot to discuss. As the probe began its journey back to Confederation space, Wu Jin realized that everything was about to change. The galaxy he had spent his life mapping was about to become much larger and much more complicated. And somewhere in his personal files sat research data that suggested the real surprises were yet to come. 6 months later, Wu Jin stood on the observation deck of the newly built diplomatic station. The structure floated in neutral space exactly at the coordinates Minho had provided. It had taken the combined efforts of 12 different species to build the station in just 5 months. As chief cartographer for the first contact mission, Wu Jin carried the responsibility of documenting this historic meeting. His new equipment, upgraded with technology from the returned probe, could map space in ways he had never imagined possible. Through the massive windows, he could see the human ship approaching. It was nothing like the vessel that had met their probe. This ship looked almost organic, as if it had grown rather than been built. It moved through space like a living thing, graceful and purposeful. Ambassador HFY stood beside him, nervously checking her translation device for the 100th time. Behind them, representatives from 50 different species waited in the main conference room. Everyone was excited and terrified at the same time. "They're docking now," announced Dayun from the communication station. She had volunteered for this mission, eager to meet the beings who had so casually upgraded their technology. The airlock opened with a soft sound. A single human stepped through, and Wu Jin was surprised by how normal she looked. She was tall and moved with easy confidence, but she could have been any species if not for her distinctive appearance. "Welcome to Neutral Station," HFY said formally. "I am Ambassador HFY of the Centauri Collective." The human smiled warmly. "I'm So Young, diplomatic representative of the Solar Federation. Thank you for building this beautiful station. It shows real craftsmanship." Her voice was clear and friendly, speaking perfect galactic standard without any accent. She looked around the station with obvious appreciation, as if she was genuinely impressed by their work. "Shall we begin?" So Young suggested. In the main conference room, So Young took a seat at the central table. She didn't bring any advisors or equipment. She sat alone, facing 50 representatives of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. "I know you have many questions," she began. "Let me start by explaining our perspective, and then you can ask whatever you want to know." So Young's manner was relaxed and open, like a teacher speaking to interested students rather than a diplomat in a formal negotiation. 300 years ago, your species were just beginning to explore space. Some of you were still fighting wars over resources and territory. You were exactly where humans were about 1,000 years before that. 1,000 years. Wu Jin felt the number like a weight in his chest. Humans had been spacefaring for over 1,000 years. "We recognized the potential in your civilizations," So Young continued. "But we also knew that contact with more advanced species too early in development can be harmful. It can create dependency or feelings of inferiority that prevent natural growth. So you decided to hide from us?" asked Zethara. "Not hide. We decided to give you space to grow. We've been watching and occasionally helping, but always from a distance. We wanted you to develop your own culture, your own solutions, your own sense of accomplishment." Dayun raised her hand like a student in class. "Have you been helping us?" How So Young smiled. "Small things. We prevented 3 major wars by making sure certain aggressive species encountered technical problems at crucial moments. We shared scientific discoveries through anonymous research papers. We even suggested the idea for the Galactic Confederation, through carefully placed diplomatic hints." The room fell silent. The Confederation, their greatest achievement, had been suggested by humans, but why? HFY asked. "Why help us at all?" "Because we remember what it was like to be young and alone in the galaxy. We made many mistakes during our own development. We wanted to help you avoid some of those same problems." Velthar, who had come from the archive for this meeting, spoke up. "What mistakes did you make?" So Young's expression became more serious. "We were aggressive when we should have been patient. We tried to control when we should have guided. We almost destroyed ourselves several times before we learned wisdom. And now?" Zethara asked. "What happens now?" "Now you get to see the real galaxy," So Young said, and her smile returned. "The regions you've mapped so far are just a small part of inhabited space. There are civilizations much older than humans, species with technologies that make ours look primitive." She gestured, and a holographic map appeared above the table. Wu Jin gasped as he saw the true scale of the galaxy. The area controlled by the Confederation was a tiny bubble in one corner. Human space was larger, but still just a small section. The rest of the map showed vast regions marked with names and symbols he had never seen before. "This is the galaxy as it really exists," So Young explained. "Humans are actually quite young compared to some species. We're just the closest neighbors to your region of space." "How many civilizations are there?" Wu Jin asked, his voice barely a whisper. "In this galaxy alone?" Several million sentient species. Most are peaceful, but not all. That's why regions like yours are protected during early development. Protected by who? By everyone who has grown beyond the need for conquest. It's a responsibility that comes with advancement. When you become powerful enough to destroy others, you must also become wise enough to protect them instead. HFY leaned forward. Are we ready now? Ready to join this larger community? So Young considered the question carefully. You're ready to begin learning. You've proven you can work together peacefully. You've shown curiosity instead of fear when faced with the unknown. Those are good signs. What happens next? Zethara asked. That depends on what you want. We can establish normal diplomatic relations and begin cultural exchanges. We can share some technologies that will help you explore further into space. We can introduce you to other civilizations that are at similar developmental stages. And eventually, Tayun asked, eventually, if you continue to grow in wisdom as well as power, you'll take your place as protectors of the next generation of young civilizations. The species that are just beginning to reach for the stars now will need guidance from those who came before. Wujin realized what she was saying. It's a cycle. Everyone gets helped when they're young and everyone helps others when they're older. Exactly. The universe is vast and often dangerous, but it's also full of wonder and possibility. The key is making sure everyone gets the chance to experience both safely. So Young stood up, signaling the end of the formal session. Take your time deciding what you want. We've waited 300 years. We can wait a little longer. When you're ready for the next steps, we'll be here. As she walked toward the airlock, HFY called out one final question. So Young, what do you call this larger community? This network of civilizations? So Young paused and looked back with a smile that seemed to hold infinite patience. We call it growing up. After the human ship departed, Wu Jin returned to his quarters and opened his star charts. Using the new mapping technology, he began the enormous task of updating the galactic database. For the first time in his life, he was mapping not the edge of known space, but the beginning of it. The galaxy was vast beyond imagination, full of ancient civilizations and young species taking their first steps toward the stars, and somewhere in that immensity, humanity stood as guardians and guides, helping others navigate the journey from isolation to understanding. Wu Jin smiled as he worked. His maps would never be complete because the universe was always growing and changing, but now at least he could map with hope instead of ignorance. The boundaries that had once seemed like walls had become doorways, and on the other side of those doorways lay infinite possibilities.